Hi there, and welcome to Holfs Sea Fishing. You join me when I'm about to go on a fishing trip over to the River Dee, local to myself, to have a try fishing for some flounders. This is an area I fish reasonably regular for flounders, and tomorrow morning's tide is a 26.7 foot tide, looking on the Labour's tide book. I know probably most anglers out there these days use meters, but generally I think being a bit old-fashioned, I've always used feet, so I tend to stick with the feet as it's a bit easier for me. That's what I'm used to using. I've still got my tide book here. Looking at the conversion for that, it's basically it's 26.7 foot, works out at 8.1 meters. This is quite a good tide for this area because it's not too much run through there. I'm slightly sheltered from the main tidal run, and the flounders tend to come in onto the sand to feed out of that main run. I'm going to be using my usual frozen blanched lugworm, which will usually be more than enough to pull out a few flounders. I'll only be fishing for probably a couple of hours maximum with a pretty basic setup. I'll probably fish two rigs or two rods, two or three hook rigs on each rod, and we'll see how we go. The forecast is dry currently, although it has been very foggy and very misty, which has been pretty damp actually. Which doesn't make for great conditions, unfortunately. But hopefully by the morning, it might be all right. It might be nice and steady at least. A bit grey, but half decent conditions to have little fish. As it sort of stands with the rigs themselves, I may just put a short clip on just to show you the rigs, although they are, as standard, very basic. I have made a bit of an alteration to my flounder or flatfish rigs of recent, starting this season as such, just going out now, to try and stop flounders especially from swallowing the hook. They are, if you fish for flounders, absolutely notorious for swallowing the hook. And although I can remove them quite easily nowadays with a little hook removal tool, which I'll also show you, I've been quite keen to just catch flounders because I've got a bit of a soft spot for flatfish and love to catch them. But I'm trying not to let them swallow the hook because out of all the species of fish that we tend to catch, flounders are the most prevalent for doing so. And it's never sat well with me that they swallow them and digging about in there getting hooks out, which I can do very effectively with a little tool I've got, a little hook removal tool. But I've been trying to avoid that, as I say. So I will show you the rig shortly. And as it happens, I have fished with this very simple setup once before. And I'm pleased to say it was very, very successful. In fact, out of about the 7 or 8 flounders I caught on that session late last year, only one managed to swallow the hook. So we'll see how we go. I will come back shortly and we'll show you the rig. So here we have the rig we shall be using for our flounder fishing trip. We're hoping to catch some flounders anyway. And as you will see, it is again very simple, nice and easy. It is a same rig, in fact, I've used on my last trip with some refreshed hook lengths and hooks. It's a weight bottom, a metal boom trapped, main body, another metal boom trapped, and then we've got our hook lengths off the booms. Again, amnesia is a favourite fishing line of mine for hook lengths. As I've mentioned previously, very abrasion resistance, very, very good line indeed, and very little memory and ties good knots. The business end, as they say, of the hook snood is, this is a size 4 hook actually. I would rather it was size 2 for flounders, but I haven't got any size 2s currently, struggling to locate any. But size 4 will be fine. But the most important part here you'll see is I have a paper clip. Now, this is what makes a difference to stop flounders swallowing the hooks. I've used this rig effectively before, and it was brilliant with this setup. And all I've done with this paper clip is bent it out and then put a loop in it in the middle of the paperclip wire. And because it's a paperclip wire, it's quite bendable. It's very easy to work with. And I have actually used an old breakaway weight wire to bend it around. Just a bit tougher. I can bend it around, create the loop to create what I've got here. And it does work very well. Now, you'll see what I've done is I have the hook, a bead. I've then threaded the hook length line through the paper clip. We'll just call it the paper clip. And another bead behind it and traps that paper clip. Okay. Then behind that, you can either have a gummy stop, or you can have, like I have here, a simple stop knot. And what that allows you to do is push this up. If you have a fish on and you need to unhook it, you can push everything back out of the way, unhook your fish, or indeed if you've got a bit of bait stuck on there, you can again push it back and get your old bait off and rebait a bit easier, and then simply just push all this back down, and that will be enough pressure to keep it nice and tight to the worm. Now the idea being is that when the flounder comes up to this hook, it can only go so far, and it will feel that resistance, and it can't physically go anywhere. So it's, if anything, it's going to start to back off, and hopefully that's when we're going to hook the fish. And as proven before, I lip hooked flounders last time I fished, and it was great to see. Really, really nice to see, because I don't like deep hooking them if we can absolutely help it. So that's going to be the rig setup we're going to use. As you can see, again, it's nothing overly complicated. So we'll give it a try, and we'll see how we go, and hopefully we'll have some fish to show you. So here we are. We've arrived at our fishing spot this morning. It's quite cold, quite damp, as predicted. The grass is very dew covered, to say the least. I've got myself a little base set up just to keep myself nice and comfortable out of the very slight breeze, which is a little chilly. You can see I've not got the rod set up just yet. I'm just waiting for the water to get a little bit closer and to do a little bit more tide run. What will happen here is the water will come up not too close to me, but it'll be close enough, there'll be enough depth, and as it comes up, the baits will get swept around to the right and into the bay as such, a little. So here you're kind of out of the main run slightly. It does sweep into this little area here, where the food sweeps in, is how I see it, and that's where I tend to catch the flounders. So hopefully we'll have some fish this morning. As I say, it's a nice size tide. It shouldn't come up too high. It shouldn't be too much run. I'm perfectly safe where I am as well. I can't be cut off or anything like that. So we'll get the rods set up, and we'll see how we do. See if we can find some fish. So both rods are rigged up and baited up, and we're good to go. As you will see here, that will focus okay, a frozen blanched lugworm, and you can see how I've got the paper clip now pushed down to the very top of the hook. So fishing this type of method, you can only really use small baits, as you can see, only really hook full, and you know, any much more than that, it's not going to work this, because it's going to be too far up the line and the paper clip's going to be too far away from the hook. But very easy to do, and we'll get these rods in now. Again, just show you another one. Very, very easy to set up. And you can see how I've got a little bit of worm hanging from the hook point. That shouldn't really be an issue, hasn't been in the past. And again, down here. And you see how these boomed rigs keep the hooks away from the rig body, which avoids tangles for sure. And I do just like using the metal booms, certainly for flatfish and general smaller fish fishing, let's just say anyway. They do work a treat. I have 5-ounce breakaways on to start with today, because there will be a good run here to start with today, and so near as a high tide, which isn't too far away anyway. But tide run here will give these baits plenty of movement. So although I'm anchoring them down, or when they do stop eventually moving with the tide and they do anchor themselves in, that's the frozen blanch there again. When they do anchor themselves in, some geese on the way through. Fantastic. Tons of seagulls this morning as well. Lots of geese this morning. Yeah, so when these breakaways do anchor in, although the baits as such you would argue would be static, they won't be, because there's plenty of play in the hook lengths, which will allow them to flutter about in the tide, because flounders do generally like a little bit of movement. And you can use beads to add colour, to do generally feed by sight, although the river stroke estuary water here today will be a little bit murky anyway, so the sight feeding will be restricted, and that's where bait fishing here will always sort of rule, generally speaking. I'm on the bigger rods today. I could be using smaller rods today, but just for ease and a bit of laziness really, and just to enjoy watching the bites hopefully. And to get in behind the brolly, I've got a cup of coffee there just cooling down ready. Just going to pop these two in. It's just easy to fish with the big rods today. I may do another little video at some point fishing with some light rods and light lines because they are fun. The flounders on the small lines, and they are quite feisty little critters when you get them on the small lighter rods. Anyway, we'll get these cast in, and I'll get me coffee. I think. Hopefully, we'll bring you back with something to show you on the fish front. Okay, so getting a little bite on the closest rod there, which is good to see. Still very early in the tide at the moment, so not expecting a great deal just yet. This time of year, flounders are quite thin on the ground in the river. I think most of them tend to go out at sea, possibly spawning. So at the moment, I'm just enjoying a cup of coffee, and as I get another cast or two in, I'm hoping I'll start to see some more obvious bites from flounders. There is a chance of whiting here as well this time of year. There's not been very much rain. I am a little bit further up the river than I would mostly fish during the year. Summertime here, you will get quite regularly eels. So if you wanted an eel for a species hunt, you will quite easily get one here come the summer months. Occasional plaice and definitely bass as well. You will get a lot of school bass up here during the very warm months. But generally, I've only ever seen usually small ones. There is an occasional better one, but generally speaking, they're very small. Also, occasional sea trout or salmon. They're really very small. It'd be quite difficult to determine which one it actually is. But yeah, it's a nice little spot. And the River Dee, I've fished this since I was a lad. Putting it bluntly, probably since about the age of 10. And we used to go and fish off the railway jetties and things. And you had flounders back then in them days, almost the size of bin lids. They were in such abundance and such sizes. Very, very, very high numbers of all fish around then, though I would say as well. So I'm going to leave this rod in for a little bit now. Say I've had a little bite, which I wasn't expecting just yet, so that's positive. And hopefully I'll bring you back shortly, and we might just have a little flounder to show you. But we'll play it by here and see how we go. Now then, I am beginning to get bites on both rods on this first cast, and that's positive. The trick to flounder fishing, I'm sure you've got to see them bites shortly, but the trick to flounder fishing is to literally, as my old granddad used to say, God rest him, sit on your hands. Okay, you can see that closest rod starting to bite away there now. Flounder bites can be quite aggressive at times as well, and they'll slap the line right down to the floor, then it'll tighten back up again. It's quite a distinctive bite, a flounder bite. You could think it sometimes, if you weren't sure, you could think it was like a monster fish sometimes, because the line can slap right down to the floor. And the same way it can with a plaice as well. Very, very similar way they bite. So yeah, the big tip on for this one here, when you're fishing for any flatfish really, be it a plaice, a flounder, a dab, a sole, whatever it may be, sit on your hands. Because pour another cup of coffee, grab yourself a butty, whatever you've got to just distract yourself a little bit, because if you're too tempted to wind in too quickly, you will miss fish. It's as simple as that. I think secondly, and really, really importantly, if you let one fish catch on a 2 or 3 hook rig like I'm fishing today, there's a lot of movement created while that fish is on that rig under the water, and that it's a fact from fishing so many years, that if you've got one flounder on, it will inadvertently attract more. It's as simple as that. Whether they get curious because they can see another fish feeding, whether they're flapping about on the bottom waiting to be retrieved in, so to speak, is creating extra movement in the other baits on the seabed. If you've got one there interested, you will definitely have more come in to have a look. So sit on your hands is the best piece of advice I can give you when you're flounder fishing. And you will be surprised how many, at times, if they're there in numbers in front of you, you will bring in just by being a little bit more patient when you're fishing for them. So yeah, a little bit of, maybe possibly a little bit of helpful advice there, especially if you're new to your fishing. I personally love a bit of flounder fishing. It's nice, easy, relaxed fishing. There's not traipsing across great big long beaches. You're not trying to present perfect baits and casting a million miles. I mean, I've cast these no more than 30 yards here. I've got one I've probably got one at 40 and one at 30. Once the tide gets up a little bit further, one will be at 20, one will be at 30. There's no point being too far out. So yeah, some hopefully some useful little bit of information. So we'll keep these rods in a little bit longer, and then we'll start to bring them in and see if we manage to hook anything on there. So there's something I'm just going to just briefly just show you here, and that is that both my lines have gone to the right. And that's exactly what they should be doing here. That's the way it should be fished. I don't know if you can see here, but I'll try and zoom out a little bit to try and show you. But further up the river, as it gets narrower, down the river, I beg your pardon, it's really rushing through in the centre, in the channel there. But when I get to here, okay, the river widens slightly, and then I'm hoping the camera will pick it up, but it then calms right off into this bay. Okay, there's very little run. There's still run there, but it's not fierce like it is in the middle, right in the channel. And quite often, I always go on about how we always cast too far, and this is a prime example of where you can cast too far. You'll see people putting on big weights and things and casting it out. It's that big, deep middle channel out there, which I'm not going to say there's no fish there, but it's going to be much harder work for them to actually feed in it, for one, and you're going to pick up a lot more rubbish in the water as far as seaweed and debris coming up and down the river. Whereas here now, my weights have moved around and they've basically gripped in where the run's just where they can just hold bottom. It's kind of where the food theoretically is running just along the edge of the channel and through. So yeah, be mindful that especially flounder fishing anyway, and to a degree it can apply to a lot of other species as well. They're not going to want to fight hard in the current run to get to their food. I mean, would you want to eat yours while doing a marathon? I know I certainly wouldn't, or even a sprint. So yeah, look for the slightly calmer spells where you can of water, where the food may get washed in, and it becomes a bit more of an easy meal for them. Now the rod's still been biting away, so we'll be getting these in very, very shortly. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we might have something to get us off the mark. Okay, so we're going to get one of these rods in now and just have a quick look to see if anything has materialised, so to speak. We'll have a little wind in and see if there's anything there. Watch it not slip over. Again, just being mindful that we don't really want to fall over. It's quite slippy. Right, let's have a little feel what we got going on here. Got a bit of run out there still, but as I say, I've been trying to avoid it best I can. And hopefully, it does feel like there's some weight there at least. I think we may be in luck. We may have some fish on here. It does feel reasonably heavy as well, actually. So whether we've got a bit of weed on there or debris, I suspect maybe there could be more than one fish. Who knows? I think this rod has, I think, 2 hooks on it, so the maximum it could have on it is 2, but I'll just take 1 to be honest. There's definitely something there. Let's have a look. Oh, lovely! Look at that! Look at that! So he's got the 3-hook rig. Now, that's what I call fishing. First cast. Oh, 2 flounders, and very unceremoniously just dropped off right at the water's edge. Now that shows me the rig setup I've got is working perfectly, and that's 2 flounders. Now I can see straight away this little method of mine that I've been using has worked absolutely perfectly. So you can see, I'm hoping you'll be able to see this on the camera, that hook is perfectly in the lip of that flounder. And these 2 flounders now, I'm going to put them straight back. I will take a very, very quick photo of them probably, but you'll see that the hook is perfectly, I hope you can see this, in the mouth. And there's no going in trying to get this through the gill, which I have done before. That is exactly what we're looking for. Result. So yeah, that's really good. Really happy with that. First cast, 2 flounders. Both dropped off in the end. Not to put the camera down, the other one come off the hook as well. But I'd rather lose an odd fish rather than keep deep hooking them. So I'm baited up again now. I'm going to cast back out and look to get the other rod back in a minute as well. So really good result first cast. If I don't get anything else at all, I'll be really pleased with the fact that they didn't deep hook again. So very simple little setup with that little paper clip, but it makes heck of a difference. That's so much easier, as much as anything, as well as the welfare of the fish a little bit, because I mean, we're going to catch them on the hook and that's the way it is, but just to lighten the load a little bit, it's got to be a benefit as regards to the unhooking. and they swam off like a good one, is all I can say on that one. If I get a chance, if I get another one, I do love to watch flounders swim off the flatfish species. They usually dart off, they go like a shot. I'll try and take a little video to show you. Anyway, we'll get this back in and we'll see what else materializes. Well, you'll notice I've put the rod very low down here. Very important fish for flatfish. Get your rods low down on the rod rest. It makes a heck of a difference. You've got 3 baits. Let's get them down the bottom where the fish live. It does make a difference. Okay, so we're going to get the second rod in. This was the closer rod of the two. I don't think this one's had as much action as the other rod, to be honest. So let's just see. Let's just see if there's anything there. Let's have a look. It's quite muddy out here. It's well, it's sand really, but it's a very soft sand. Let's have a look. If there's anything on this time, I think it's quite small. But I think there is something there again, so that's encouraging. I think there might be something there. Let's have a look. Oh my god, it's the smallest flounder you've ever seen in your life. Now that's what you call a toddler. Now, what I would say is, this might be the smallest flounder I've ever seen, and you may be the smallest flounder you may ever see on camera, to be honest with you. What I would say is, and I'm hoping you can see this again, it is hooked on the, well, it's outside the mouth, but it's not swallowed it down. Now, I'm almost certain if that had been in a normal situation without that paperclip on it, that tiny flatfish would quite likely swallow that down. So that's, again, a relief that that paperclip has worked. But I'm not going to hang about this little tiny fish because he's only so small. I want to get him straight back in the water. But perfectly formed, lovely and clean, perfect condition, perfectly hooked as such. We're getting back in. Tiniest flatfish you've ever seen in your life. That's brilliant. Okay, time to get down to some serious business. It's time for a brew. And I've managed to snaffle this morning before I come out of the house, the ones that nobody wants, the leftovers in the tins. You know, it is Christmas time. So yeah, I have a couple of those. Rude not to. A nice cup of coffee. Rods are both back in. And we'll see if we get any more improvements. I'm definitely having them. These 2 rods are back in now. And that's very, very, very tiny flounder. Yeah, a little bit of an unusual one. I've seen small flounders before, but that was a tiny, tiny flounder. It's a good sign, of course, because ultimately, you know, they're the future stock for the future of our fishing, and you always try to get fish back in the water pretty quickly. You know, on the camera, I'll give you a quick look at a fish, and then it's pretty much back in. It's just generally the way that we are really. Even if we catch different, you know, any species, doesn't really matter what it is. It all goes back very, very quickly, really. Keep occasional fish for eating for the table. Maybe a nice place or a nice sole, something like that. Sole, if I catch one, are very, very tasty. But as I say, thinking for the future, tend to put most things back. So we'll continue on for a little bit longer. Say it's getting near to high tide. The peak period for this area isn't. I'm actually surprised I even caught anything first cast or even had a bite. To be honest with you, I was here a little bit early just to get myself organised. And usually it's sort of near that high water period, and then on the ebb for an hour or so. Usually when it tends to be more prevalent here in the past. During this time of year now, sort of December into January and February, it can get very slow here anyway. So I'm surprised to say I've got those so quickly. I've fished this time of year in the past and usually get 2 or 3 fish. So you come here in October, you can get a lot more. And through some months again, you can get a lot, but some months you will get pestered with eels as well. But Yeah, so difficult this time of year, but I believe that if you're going to go fishing in the winter months, I mean, it's warmed up a little bit now. My hands, I do struggle with my hands, and it's warmed up a little bit from first thing this morning, and the sun's up. Not looking really see much of it, but yeah, you need to fish for what you can catch if possible. I'm all for going for trying for a codling in the winter months, but their numbers have diminished so significantly over the last, certainly over the last 10 years. So I believe you need to fish for what's there, and you never know what will come along anyway. You do get odd surprises along the way. So yeah, try to fish for what's there. Like I could go and sit on, an open beach now. I was up the coast yesterday up by Colwyn Bay, and the water was like a mirror. And if I was to cast a rod out into there in the daytime yesterday, I would likely not got a touch, nothing. And it's not all about catching fish, admittedly, but we are here to catch fish. So if we can, increase our chances of actually catching something while we're fishing, that makes the whole thing, for me anyway, a lot more enjoyable. So try to think it is again another little piece of advice. If you're going to go fishing, try to make sure you're going to go and try and catch your target if you can. I actually really, really enjoy catching flatfish and flounders, plaice, sole occasionally, and even rays, if you will, as a flatfish as such. Um, they're I love catching bass as well on light rods and lures when I get the chance and the opportunity. But if I can't get to do what I'd like to catch, which is bass or cod or rays or whatever it may be, then I'll take the next best thing, get out, get some fresh air. And it is really good for mental health, as they say. It's good for morale. And yeah, it's generally good for you. So get out there and enjoy some fishing. Don't always have to catch, but try and think about increasing your chances by targeting something that's actually there. So very quiet on this cast. Rods will be coming again shortly. My alarm's due to go off, I would have thought, pretty soon. No movement on the rods. Doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to wind in a fish with flounder fishing, but generally you'd always get a sign of some movement there. You'll see now the water has now risen, and as I say, this is about ideal. If you've lower tides than this, it's okay. Lower heights, high tides, but you do tend to have to walk across the mud a little more to bring your rod in if you've got fish on. Whereas this sort of tide upwards, you tend to find you can fish from this grass bank very comfortably, very easily. Very handy if you're not particularly able-bodied. You can, this sort of tide height upwards, you can fish it without having to walk too far. As I've only parked about 100 yards away over there, so it's very comfortable to fish. So yeah, it's a good little spot if you don't want to walk too far, I guess, especially in the colder months as well. But definitely, certainly flounders here. Maybe not in very good numbers at the moment, but I'm happy to be out having a try. And what I've had so far, yeah, that'll do. I'll go with that for the time being. So we'll get these back in again shortly, and we'll get them refreshed. So we have the geese coming down the river. Always nice to see. I think quite a few coming down actually. I'm just about to recast back in again, and we'll see if we can get anything. I've taken the brakes off now, so we're going to let the weight move more to encourage some more movement as the tide run drops off nearer to high tide. You actually get a bit of an eddy effect here. At the moment, the current in the centre is going off to the right, but I got a little eddy going on here in this bay where you'll see the top on there, the bubbles on the top going off to the left, so we get a nice eddy movement going on around here, which is where I believe the food does get swirled in a bit for the fish, so it tends to help, in my opinion, anyway. So we'll get this back in, and we'll see if we can get anything else. So here now I'm getting a typical flounder bite. You'll see the line has dropped into a bit of a bow, and they will tend to move the weight even with breaks in at times. What you'll tend to find is you'll get a really good sort of bit of rattle, and the line can drop almost down to the ground sometimes, and then it'll tighten back up again. It's a very individual bite for flounders. Very, very individual. You don't really get many species do that apart from flounders, and plaice is the other one that does it as well. The other flatfish we fish for being sole, they're a different bite again. They go berserk once they find the hook, that's for sure. But yeah, your flounder bite, I'm just trying to see if it'll do it again for you on the camera. And again, all I'm doing here now, as I have had a little touch on the other bite, on the other rod as well, little bite there. I am just literally, it's going to start to do it now. You can see the line moving. You see that there? Now that's a typical. It's not a very big flounder, this I can tell you that at the moment. It would seem so anyway. But if you get a good sized flounder, that rod will be bouncing, and the line will be dropping and back up again and dropping and moving around a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean it's hooked at this point, and I certainly wouldn't bring a rod in straight away with that happening. Again, primarily because of what I mentioned earlier on, where one fish can draw in another one and another one. So even if you've got one hooked on there right now, I'd rather leave it on because for a few more minutes or so, because it may well draw another one in and increase the catch rate. So pleased to see that there's some movement there. The tide run has dropped off now here. This, quite generally speaking, with flounders, they always tend to say you want movement, you want run, and that is absolutely true. But in this particular spot, I've always found that once that tide run drops off, it's when the fish tend to feed more. It's almost like they wait for the run to go because it can get quite fierce through this river, and then they come out while it's on the slack, feed hard, and then once it really starts to get running strong current again, they tend to sort of bury, and that's how I've tended to work it. And it's usually done okay. I'd say the water temperature being down at the moment now, they aren't as active, and they're not. I don't think they're hunting as much as what they would be if it'd been a nice sort of warmer summer months or sort of autumn months where the seawater temperature is much warmer. I can see the line's dropped right down here now. I mean, that line was tight before, and now you've got a really big bow in it. So you can see how that's pulled a weight inshore, which would make me think it's hooked. So I'm going to give it a little bit longer, and then I'll look to bring it in. As I say, I have had a little bite on the other rod as well, but that hasn't materialised in the same way. But if I can pull one fish out on a cast, I'd be absolutely chuffed, to be honest with you. Just keeping myself busy. It's not too cold now, thankfully. I'm well wrapped up, as you can probably see on the video, because I'm a bit, as everyone says, I'm a bit nesh. I work outside a lot in work, and I'm always hat and scarf this time of year, well wrapped up. So it's nothing worse than being cold, is there? So we'll give it a little bit longer. I can see there's still some movement there in the line, so all being well, we'll have something to show you soon enough. Okay, so the first rod I brought in was nothing on there. This time I'm going to bring the other rod in, which has had some movement on it, so I'm going to give it a little look and just see if there's anything this time. Not overly hopeful because there hasn't been much movement on it, but sometimes they can play what we like to call doggo, which basically means they hook themselves and don't really do a lot, especially when the water temperature is down and it's cold. So we can only have a look and see if we've got any action. But there's might be a little bit of weight on this actually, which would be nice. Get another one. We shall see. Yeah, I think there's something there. Getting a bit of a kick around now. Especially in the warm-ups, they do an half go. Say these are like, yo, there's definitely something on this one. Funny, isn't it? It's hardly had a bite on this rod. I was going to got all kick about now. Definitely, flounders don't half go well when they get into the shallows close in like the place. They go really, really well as well. There he is. Lovely. Fantastic. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Look at that. That's what we like to see. And again, I'll just whiz him up to the camera very briefly. I'm hoping you can see he is perfectly lip hooked. Again, he is. You can see that hook is right there, not down here inside the fish, which is brilliant. And I'll just bring the camera over now just to try and just show you the hook situation again a little bit closer. Really pleased to see another flounder. Had a cast about nothing there, so get the camera and we'll have a little look before we quickly pop it back. Really nice to see, as I say, but you can see, I hope you can see the hook point just sticking out there on the camera. And as I say, really importantly, this hook isn't down in the fish's throat, it's right here. And what a lovely condition flounder that is as well. You said they have the odd like a bit of an orange spot there. Now this is what I call a flounder. It's almost like I don't know if it is a hybrid or not, but hybrid between a plaice and a flounder. But when you get these quite obvious orange spots. It's obviously not a places, by the way, it's just the wrong colour. This tail section here is too thin. They're quite a thick set fish. When you catch them early season, they're quite pale as well, and very thin place, but there's a very obvious lateral line as well. It's raised and very bumpy on the head here, whereas it's not like that on a place. It's much smoother, not very as pronounced. But absolutely chuffed to get another flounder in the bag, so to speak. I'm going to get the camera off now and get him back into the water. Lovely jubbly. So I'm going to show you what me and my good friend Chris love most about catching a fish. Watch this now. Woo! Gone. They're brilliant. Love flatfish, especially when they swim off like that. Yeah, really starting to get going now. I've just put that fish back and the other rod's starting to bounce away. So as I say, it's that slack period over high water. It seems to be here anyway. I know it does differ where you fish, but when the tide slacks right off, it's almost as if the flounders come out the mud and the sand to feed. Like I say, it's a good pull. Obviously, a bite like this, the way I'm fishing with the paper clips on to stop them swallowing the hooks, I have missed bites in the past. Whereas if I hadn't had the paper clips on them, you'd pretty much catch them every time. I used to find previous years, but as I say, the problem with that was I couldn't release that fish that quickly. It'd be getting the hook out from deep within the fish usually, which I can do quite comfortably and confidently nowadays. But especially if you're new to sea angling, you're going to struggle to get that fish back in the water again quick enough, really, and trying to do the least amount of harm to it as you can. But yeah, so hopefully we might have another fish to show you not too in too long, and hopefully I'm hoping it'll catch, and the paperclip little jobby will do its thing and stop it from being too deeply hooked. But so far, 3 flounders. Is it 3 flounders too? No, 4 flounders now, and none of them have swallowed the hook. So to say I'm pleased would be an understatement. But keep on going. Right then, so we've had bites on both rods now. I've sat on my hands long enough. I'm going to give this rod a little check. It hasn't done a lot of biting this rod, so whether there'll be anything or not, I don't know. But I'm just going to give it and have a look anyway now, because the bait's had long enough. It gets wishy-washy out in the run. It is starting to run this water now on the ebb, starting to ebb back out into the ocean. So we're going to have a look, check. The mud is starting to expose more now, so I'll have to just stand on the mud. It's quite solid ground here, so you have to stand off. It's not sloppy mud or anything here, which is good. I'd say there may not be a fish on its time, but we'll have a little look just to see. I think there's something there, actually. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. So there wasn't much of a bite. I think the temperature of the water is definitely affecting, but yeah, I can definitely feel a bit of kick in there this time. Must be a fairly reasonable one, I would have thought. Go on, my son. Oh, yeah, look at that. Oh, not as big as the last one, but certainly went well coming in. So there it is, another one. That takes us to 5. And I can assure you again, perfectly lip hooked. Again, I don't know whether the camera will pick it up, but it is perfectly lip hooked. I'm going to set it down, and I don't like leaving them hanging about too long, if I'm honest. On the hooks by their mouths. There he is. Super lively. I'm just going to get the camera again, just very briefly. There we go. And yet again, see the orange spots a little more vibrant. I don't know if the camera picks it up, but as well as my eye, so to speak. But yeah, it's very spotty, but it's definitely not a place. Quite often people sort of get mixed up and think these things are place and they're not. But again, you can see the hook. I'll just turn them upside down here if I can, if you'll let me. I don't like being upside down. Lovely and clean on the bottom, but you can see, there you go. There's the hook. Just there. He's going to be unhooked now, and he's going to be popped straight back in and on his way. Thank you very much. Lovely. So, Mr. Flounder, are you ready? A little bit more muddy here now. 3, 2, 1. Let's get him gone. Oh, there he goes. Lovely. Brilliant. And the side is dropping now. The mud's starting to expose. from where I was fishing. I think I'm a 27-foot tide today. You fish up to about a 29-foot tide in this area, you'll be fine on this grass bank. If you get a higher tide than that, then it tends to be that the grass floods with water. It's not that it's necessarily unsafe, it's just that you can't stand on it because you'd be stuck in water. So 29-foot tide, and it's quite fishable. But really glad to see another flounder there. I think that's taking me to 5 now. I'm really pleased that I've even caught, to be honest, because the water temps have been so cold. Lovely scenery across the river. Been a nice morning. Over to the Dee crossing there. The old steelworks there as well, Tartar as it was. I'm not sure if it's even still active nowadays, to be honest with you. But yeah, there we go. Right, we're going to get the other rod in shortly, and we'll see if anything is on there, because we have had some movement as well. So these flounders the last half an hour or so have been a little bit inconsiderate. I've not been able to even get myself a cup of coffee. Parched I am. So I'm very quickly going to get a quick cup of coffee. The other rod is due in, it has had bites, but yeah, I want a quick drink, so here we go. So as it is, I'm going to get the other rod in, as I say, shortly. That has had bites. I'm hoping there'll be something on it. There could be more than one on it. It's been biting a little bit, but like I say, we'll have to wait and see. I keep on going about these paper clips. Yeah, it's important that people know about these, because if people are catching flounders quite regularly, these paper clips are so easy to do and make such a difference all over to the session, to getting them back in the water quickly, to making the fish just easier so you can rebait in and get in the water more quickly again. They're just really, really good. So yeah, if you do fish for flounder, even if you have another species along, these paper clips aren't going to hinder them. I've had whiting and other things take the flounder rigs, and the paper clip makes no difference at all. So do use them if you're fishing for flounders. Please get it out there, because it does really, really make a heck of a difference, as you've seen already. Anyway, enough about me wibbling on there. I'm going to quickly finish my coffee. I'll get the other rod in and see if we've managed to snare anything else. So I've just wound in again, brought the rod in, and here we go. One really nice sized flounder in nice condition, and as you can see, hopefully, again, perfectly lip hooked. Perfectly hooked. And this little one here, he just fell off right on the grass. So they are only getting lip hooked, and lucky to get that one, but that's a double header. Thank you very much. That's brilliant, and that big one gave a good old account of itself on the way in as well. So we're going to get these straight back in and get them on their way. Oh yeah, a nice sized flounder this time. Let's get him back in the water. Let's give him a chance to go. Gone. Lovely. Really been an enjoyable session. Must be getting 7 or 8 flounders there now. The other rod's been biting as well. I'll be coming to the end of my session shortly. Tide is running quite hard now. Not too bad really. Not compared to the likes of the Mersey anyway. Yeah, a little bit longer and then it'll be time to head home. But we'll get another cast in. We'll see how we go. The fish would sort of normally drop off very shortly anyway. But the tide run isn't too bad. It's quite manageable, so it may feel a bit longer, but we'll see. We'll see how we go. So that's my little fishing trip over with now. Just wanted to very quickly again just show you that a little setup, the paperclip setup, which I've mentioned earlier in the video. If you are fishing for flounders, do consider using it. As I've mentioned, it's really effective. It won't affect other species generally speaking either. You'll still catch them, and it just saves deep hooking those flounders. I think generally speaking, if I think I'm in an area where I may catch a flounder going forward, I may well pop these on anyway, because they are so effective at stopping them from deep hooking, as you've seen visually today. I'm only a little amateur beginner little YouTube channel, but if you could, I would suggest if you could share this little video to anywhere where you think it may be useful, to let people know, because this would be a real good addition to a lot of anglers' arsenal really, to when they're fishing for flounders. I mean, this is only very basic. I picked this little method up off the World Sea Fishing Forum a year or two ago. I gave it a go, and here I am. I'm sure someone out there could probably adapt it and make it even easier to use, or even easier to make, or make it more effective. I have no idea, but you know, do please, I would say, I don't really, you know, if you don't share any of my other videos, it's fine. I do this mainly for my enjoyment really, and to show people some of the places that I fish where you may know, you know, what's being caught, and it helps other anglers. Is it worth going out, worth a try to catch? But yeah, I would say do please do share this one if you wouldn't mind, just so people can see this little setup, as it may help others. Other than that, thank you again for watching. If you've watched before, do give the video a like if you could, and it lets me know that people are actually liking the video. And all being well, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. And you couldn't make it up, could you? There's me thinking, no bites on the rods, winding the second rod to go home, and there's a nice fat flounder on it. You couldn't make it up, could you? Well, that's me done for all this session, and I say another one lip hooked, really pleased, and we'll see you next time.